Hi ladies and gentlemen, when I made the Warrior video, I was pretty sure that Blizzard wouldn't leave Fury in the awful state it was back then, and I promised I would make an update about any of the changes if and when they would appear. I finished my video about the changes made to Fury earlier this week, but Lord and behold, Blizzard decided to throw some more changes towards the Fury Warrior, so I could delete my video and make an entire new one. Thank you Blizzard for wasting 20 hours of my life. Nevertheless, as promised, here is the new, super fresh, updated look at the Fury Warrior. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Battle for Azeroth content. In this one, I'll go over the changes made to spells and abilities, which are quite a few, and I will also do a quick comparison with the Legion talents and the new BFA Beta ones. And hopefully they will stay more or less the same. So what happened? Well, in general, Blizzard wanted to change the pacing of the game. They might state that this is not the case, but it most definitely is, and I think most of you guys do agree with me. Of course, this resulted in Blizzard introducing the GCD changes during the BFA Alpha. In the beginning, a shit ton of things were on the global cooldown, which was horrible. But as time passed and a lot of people wouldn't stop complaining, Blizzard took more and more things back off the GCD. Now that's good news. However, the Warrior, and in particular the Fury Warrior, was a spec that evolved around bursty gameplay and the stacking of offensive cooldowns, which meant we could say goodbye to all of our macros. Well, Blizzard said no more to that kind of playstyle. Currently in BFA, they're trying to push Fury in the direction of no longer having to rely on good gear and the stacking of offensive cooldowns to achieve satisfying gameplay. At the same time, the developers weren't happy with Fury Slash, which always felt kind of lackluster. Blizzard is pushing the class design of Fury in a total different direction, and I really like the changes. It's funny because during BFA testing, Fury went from one extreme to another. It started out as one of the most broken and slowest specs in Alpha, and now evolved into one of the most fun and fast-paced specs that are currently on the beta. I have a really hard time understanding the dev team who are in charge of class design. I think the Fury Warrior just had too many flaws, and I think Blizzard's only solution was to take out all of the offensive cooldowns like Avatar and Bloodbath, which were causing the GCD problems, and just completely remove them. Yes, you heard it right, Avatar and Bloodbath are completely gone. Okay, let's go over the new spells and abilities first. Currently in the BFA Beta, Enrage has changed entirely, but it's still the spec's core-based mechanic. In the beta, it now gives X% damage increase, 25% haste buff, and 10% movement increase. On top of that, the damage taken during Enrage is removed, and as a result, Fury will also no longer have a shit ton of health, as the only extra amount of health will come from the stats of your extra two-hander. In Legion, Enrage uptime sometimes felt a little too much, and in BFA, Enrage duration is set back to 4 seconds. Blizzard is trying to find a fine line between rampages, and this should be better because of our improved rage generation on the beta. Currently in the beta, the enraged damage percentages and haste percentages are still changing very often, so it's entirely possible that it's not the same as stated in the video. Raging Blow also changed and now generates 12 rage and has 2 charges and a 8 seconds recharge. On top of that, Raging Blow also has 20% chance to instantly reset its own cooldown and no longer requires you to be enraged. A very good change in my opinion. Next is Furious Slash, which has been removed as a baseline ability. Blizzard didn't like how Furious Slash played as a filler, and overall it felt pretty weak. So yeah, Furious Slash is no longer on your bars unless you pick the Furious Slash talent. Bring us to Whirlwind. Why oh why did they do this? I found it horrible when I played ARMS in Legion because they had Whirlwind as a filler back in Taurus. But apparently it's okay for Fury to have Whirlwind as a filler in BFA, even on single targets. I do agree that in terms of class fantasy, having Whirlwind as a filler adds to the visual effects of Fury, but using an AoE ability as a filler still feels kind of weird. Nevertheless, with Furious Slash no longer part of your baseline rotation, unless talented, Whirlwind is your new filler when Bloodthirst and Raging Blow are on cooldown. It also gives you a buff which makes your next 2 single target abilities cleave, including Execute. Whirlwind also has a decent amount of synergy with the new talents and generates rage as well. Which automatically brings us to Execute, which has seen some big changes as well. They basically didn't like how Execute was a rage spender, and your rampage was no longer part of your rotation once the boss's health was under 20%. Don't shoot me, yes I know the legendary ring did give us Massacre back in Legion, but it doesn't exist in BFA. So what does this mean? Well, Execute now works as a rage generator, generating 20 rage and has a 6-second cooldown, because rampage should be your only rage dumping mechanic. I can only feel bad with how many PvP Fury Warriors are crying right now, because now only ARMS can still spam Execute. Oh yeah, and Victory Rush has been given back to the Fury Warrior, must feel great for the PvPers among you. Battle Shout is of course also back with being the class not the player motto. Recklessness is the old battle cry, doubling your rage generation and increasing your critical strike chance by 20%. That is all of the changes made to our baseline abilities, and with that said, let's go and compare the Legion talents with the new and fresh BFA Beta ones. One thing I do want to mention first is, if you have been watching my videos, I always tell you guys that most of these specs have a lot of options in terms of the different playable builds. Well, the Fury Warrior is also one of those specs, where a build can, for example, evolve around more haste or around more enrage uptime. Do be aware that Blizzard is still changing the talents quite frequently. War Machine has lost its haste buff, but now generates 10% more rage, and killing an enemy also generates 10 rage. On top of that, it also improves your movement speed by 30%, add another 10% from your enrage, and Fury Warriors are going to be all over the place. Endless Rage is basically the same as our legendary head, gaining 6 rage whenever you enrage. Combining this talent with Carnage is, for example, a very good combo. Fresh Meat gives Bloodthirst another 15% chance to trigger Enrage on top of your baseline 30%, which brings the total to 45%. Bloodthirst also heals for 20% more. This talent can be combined with, for example, Frothing Berserker. The 30 row is the same as in my previous video. The 45 row, where Inner Rage has taken the place of Wrecking Ball, which has now been removed. Raging Blow's cooldown is reduced by 1 second and damage is increased by 15%. Nothing mind-blowing, to be honest. Sudden Death is a new and fresh talent. Yes, Arms has the same one. Your attacks have a chance to reset the cooldown of Execute and make it usable on any target regardless of their health. Very good talent because a Fury Warrior Execute generates Rage, and Whirlwind makes your Execute hit up to 2 additional targets. Whirlwind sometimes feels like a better version of Sweeping Strikes. Avatar has been removed entirely, and Furious Slash has taken its place. It looks like the GCD problem in BFA has come to a point where Blizzard is just removing offensive cooldowns, like Avatar and Bloodbath, in its entire form, removing the option to take a talent that is affected by the GCD, and Lord and behold, the GCD problem disappears. Furious Slash works like Frenzy in Legion. It gives us 2% extra haste every time we use Furious Slash, stacking up to 3 times. Add the Enrage buff, Fresh Meat, and the Frothing Berserker talent on top of that, you can already guess what will happen. You get a shit ton of haste. The 60 row is the same as in my previous video. Onto the 75 row, Carnage will most likely synergize better with how Enrage works in BFA because of the insane amount of haste that we get. Massacre still feels lackluster and did see some change. Execute is now usable on targets below 35%, which is okay, but I never had the feeling that it would be better than Carnage or Frothing Berserker. Frothing Berserker gives another haste buff on top of your Enrage haste buff. This talent makes Fury play really smooth. Makes Fury one of the fastest playing specs currently on the BFA Beta. Almost there guys, on the 90 row where Bloodbath is removed, and they introduced a new talent called Meat Cleaver. This talent is the bomb in Mythic Plus and leveling, further enhancing the Whirlwind build and class fantasy Blizzard is trying to achieve with the Fury Warrior. Personally, I think this is the best pick out of the 3, and you can do insane damage with the trash packs. Even on single target, your damage will be quite good. On top of that, it also gives Whirlwind a chance to enrage you. Dragon's Roar is okay, but nothing mind-blowing. Bladestorm isn't as long as in Legion, but I'm not sure if people will play it since we've never used it in Legion. I do really like Bladestorm, but we'll still have to wait once BFA goes live and we see some correct numbers. Almost there, people. Onto the last row, Reckless Abandon, which got buffed and now lasts 1 second longer than the Legion version. Onto a new talent, which is quite familiar because Arms has the same talent, Anger Management. Every 25 rage you spend reduces the remaining cooldown on Recklessness by 1 second. With the current state of the Fury Warrior, you generate an insane amount of rage, and with Rampage being your only rage dump mechanic, you also dump an insane amount of rage, making this talent a lot of fun. Which brings us to Siegebreaker, also a new talent, which sounds almost the same as the Arms Warbreaker talent, and it kind of works the same way, breaks the enemy's defense X amount of damage, and increasing your damage done to the target by 15% for 10 seconds, can be cleaved onto other targets using Whirlwind. Those are all of the new talents that are currently in the BFA Beta. Like I told you guys, there are a lot of possible different builds you can try, which is a good thing, and again, there are some difficult choices to be made as well. So what is my conclusion about the changes Blizzard made to Fury? Well, personally, I think they did a very good job. Fury feels so smooth in BFA and no longer feels like the spec that is falling behind because they're waiting for their offensive cooldowns to come with the GCD. The gameplay is for the most part solid and very enjoyable, with using Bloodthirst and Raging Blow as your rage generators, using Whirlwind as your filler, Recklessness as your offensive cooldown, and Rampage as your rage dumping mechanic. Of course, Blizzard will most likely be tweaking Fury a little bit more in the next upcoming weeks. For the most part, the overall response from the Fury Warrior community was quite good. Like in every video, let's do a quick recap about the Warrior. Arms looks great, and now Fury has finally seen some big changes, and they are great, and the gameplay is again engaging and very smooth. Blizzard is giving Warriors all they need in BFA, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. Most of you guys can probably see where I'm going with this. Yes, the Warrior will be one of my possible 3 mains for BFA. I'm saying possible mains because I'm going to choose 3 in total. I always choose at least 2 when I go into a new expansion, as Blizzard can still make changes that I might not like to a class I was going to make my main. And of course there are also 2 other classes I really enjoy playing. But hey, that's for future videos. After I'm done with the series, I'll go over my top 3 and then I'll make my final decision about which class will be my perfect main for BFA. That is again all for this video. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the Fury Warrior in BFA. Do you like the changes? And of course, let me know which one of you guys also chose to make Warrior their main for BFA. Don't forget to drop a like on the video, and of course, subscribe to the channel if you want to join me in the journey of finding my perfect main for BFA. For the people that are already subscribed, don't forget to click on the bell icon next to the subscriber button. That way you'll automatically get notified when I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.